So we're continuing our series, Summer in the Psalms, where each Sunday we've been taking a different psalm, not necessarily in order, but a psalm each Sunday as we go throughout the summer. And today we'll be in Psalm chapter 34. But while you're turning there, I just got to ask, have you ever been running away from a danger or a situation or maybe even out of trouble? And you found some solution to get yourself out of trouble, but then it backfired and got worse? Okay, I'm hearing some laughs. So someone's remembering something that happened to them. But I remember, I'm going to talk about my dad for just a second, because I was trying to think of different things. And I'll give this short little funny story. So Dad was teaching me how to drive stick shift, because my first vehicle was a stick shift truck. And I had no idea how to drive any of that, any type of cars that we drove on the farm. It was all automatic. There was one, it was a column shift. And I learned how to drive that, but the stick shift with the transmission down here, I wasn't exactly sure. It'd been a lot of years since I've driven something that I had to physically push a pedal, my word. I am a dad, but to shift it into gear. And we're learning, we're on the interstate, we're driving on 69, we're still up in Oakland City at the time. And I go and I take the exit for Oakland City. And when I get up there, I'm not confident in my driving ability in this vehicle. So I'm waiting for this car to come, and honest to goodness, the car was probably a mile away. Like I probably not that far, but I could have made it about 10 times before it actually got there. And it was one car after the other. And there's no one behind us, so there's no pressure on me until Dad looked at me and said, "Go." And I was like, "What? There's a car coming." He goes, "Well, now it's coming, but it was coming 5 minutes ago and you still didn't go." He's like, "Just go, put it in gear and go." So then I knew that if I didn't go in that moment, I was going to get in trouble. So to get out of trouble, and because, every son has a duty to prove their dad wrong, right? I unintentionally, because I didn't know what I was doing, I've shifted it in the gear, I floored it, and then took off the clutch. Tires started spinning. I do fishtail out of that right in front of this car that had been coming. Now it's here, and I start taking off, and Dad says, "You better pull this thing over right now." So I pull it over. He said, "If you ever do that again, you're never having a vehicle until after you're out of this house, and then I'm still going to make you pay for it. I'm going to make you pay for this one, and then you're going to have to pay for the next one." And in that small moment, I was trying to think of some solution to get out of this small trouble, and I ended up putting myself and my dad in more danger. Now, if you know my dad, you also know that he was a police officer, and he was the chief of police. So that didn't fly very well whenever that happened. But if you've ever been in a similar type of situation where you're running away from danger, you're running away from a situation where you don't want to get in trouble, you don't want to feel the pain of whatever's happening, and then you figure out some solution, and it ends up being worse. There's this easy example of lying. As a kid, every kid goes through this phase where they lie to cover up something that they did because they knew they would get in trouble. Another example of when I kind of basically lied to my parents, and they know this, but I know my mom's sitting right over here, okay? She already knows this. It's not new knowledge, and she can't ground me because I'm too old now. But we had our refrigerator, and I went in, I was getting something to eat, and I saw these numbers. I didn't know what the numbers did. I know now that was the temperature. So I started messing with the numbers just to see what would happen, and nothing happened. So then I just shut the refrigerator. A little bit later, that same day, Dad says, "Jessica, Logan, come here." We all run in here. We all know his tone. It's like, oh no, we're in trouble. One of us is in trouble. So we sit in there, And he opens up the fridge. He said, "Who moved the numbers?" I looked right at Jessica. I don't know what you're talking about. And then Mom, "You're not in trouble. Just tell us who did the numbers." Now, I'm not saying a word. This is how I'm getting out of trouble. I'm not saying nothing. So I sat there. I was like, I didn't even know there was numbers in the fridge. I mean, how am I supposed to move them? And they all look at Jessica. Jessica, to this day, took blame for that. So Jessica's like, I didn't move the numbers. They're like, all right, Logan's too young. He doesn't know better. He didn't even know there's numbers in the fridge. You know that there's numbers in the fridge. Just admit. And I think eventually she admitted it. But that's how I avoided danger in that situation. But lying, you had to eventually lie again to cover up your first lie. And then you leave yourself with a trail of lies, and eventually your mom or your dad, they catch on. Well, there's this deeply theological resource I want to share with you because it describes this exact same situation, and it's called The Karate Kid. Everyone grow up watching The Karate Kid? I know it was before my time, but I was raised right and I still watched it, okay? I'm talking about the Mr. Miyagi, not the Jaden Smith or any of the other ones. This is original 1984 Karate Kid, right? So in this scene that I remember, there was Johnny, who is the guy, the bully, and from the Cobra Kai dojo, and he was bullying Daniel's son. And Daniel was sick of it. He was tired of it. So his solution to get out of bullying was what any other guy would do. Stand up to the bully. Stand your ground and show him who's boss. So he puts this water hose, if you remember the scene, he puts the water hose on the faucet and puts it over the stall where Johnny was minding his own business. And then he turns on the water. I tried to say it nice. So he turns on the water and then starts sprinting out because Johnny gets out, he's soaking wet, and they start chasing him. Well, Daniel, in that moment, he thought, I just won, I got myself out of trouble, I'm not going to get bullied anymore. But what ended up happening, if you remember the scene, they all chase him and he gets cornered because he can't climb up the fence. And they pull him down on the fence and they start beating him up, all 5 of the people from the Cobra Kai dojo. And Daniel is barely able to stand on his own. And you see Johnny and one of the others, they're arguing with each other about if they should take another hit or not. And Johnny tells him, the enemy never gets mercy. So he goes and he jumps to try and hit him. And then there's Mr. Miyagi jumping off the fence and went, blah, blah, blah. Takes them all out easily, right? And then at the end of the movie, Daniel gets his ultimate victory whenever he does what every single kid that watched The Karate Kid do. He's standing there like this. I can't do the kick, but I'm not even going to try. I'm going to fall down and embarrass myself in front of my own son. So, but he goes and he does the kick. But in this, with Mr. Miyagi, he, in that moment, was Daniel's savior. He saved him from getting hospitalized. He saved him from being injured so much worse or whatever else they were going to do to him. And something similar happens to David in the Bible. And when this happens, he writes Psalm 34. Now, Psalm 34 is connected to actually this story in 1 Samuel chapter 21. And I'll give you a glimpse. Instead of making you go all the way back, you can take a note. But here's a glimpse of what's happening to Daniel, or David, not Daniel. We're not talking about Daniel anymore. I've got 2 biblical people that I'm talking about, and one of them's not biblical. But David, so King Saul finds out that David is going to take his place as king. So King Saul's reign as the king of Israel is going to be cut short because David has now been appointed as king. Well, this angers Saul, and Saul finds very many different ways that he can try and get rid of David and even kill David. Because if he kills David, then Saul would remain as king, and Saul's legacy, his bloodline, would continue to rule over Israel. It's his thoughts. So he goes after David, and he's trying to find David. David finds out that Saul, the next time that he sees Saul, he's probably going to die. So David, this is the same David that defeated Goliath. He finds this out, and he starts running away from Saul. He starts running away from his problems. He starts running away from the danger that he felt. And David's solution is to escape danger and run away from it into this place called Gath. Now, if you know where Gath is in the Bible, it's in the Philistine territory. This is the same city that the king of the Philistines would have lived in, and was likely the same city that Goliath himself lived in and grew up in. Now, if you don't know the non-Sunday school friendly version of the story of David and Goliath, you know, because of Sunday school, he gets the stone, he throws it, and what we think is like this little pocket slingshot that we got as kids, but it was the actual slingshot that knocked him out, but the stone hitting Goliath on the forehead is not what killed Goliath. What killed Goliath was David came over there to him, picked up Goliath's own sword, and cut off his head. But he didn't stop there. He grabbed Goliath's head and paraded around the Philistine territory, showing them, our God is stronger than yours. Our God is mightier than all of your entire armies, anyone that you could face us. This is what's going to happen to him. And David runs around and parades around the Philistine land so everyone knows who David is. And you can see where this would put David in a sticky situation, because he's leaving his own country to avoid death from his own people and is going into the enemy territory where he paraded around that we're so much better than you because our God is better than you. And now he's there and everyone recognizes him as the guy who killed their champion Goliath, and also the guy who put them enslaved under Israel. So now David is there. People start recognizing him. Like, wait, isn't that David? The guy who was so bold and came and showed us off that he killed our champion? We got to take him to the king. He needs to pay for what he did. So they bring him up to the king. And in the moment, David's like, if I don't change my behavior, I'm going to die. I'm going to die here instead of at the hand of my own people. So he goes before the king and he starts acting mentally insane, is what Scripture will say. So he starts acting all crazy, he's scratching on the doors, and has drool hanging from his mouth, which was a sign of huge shame and dishonor. And he's running around. You know, I kind of imagine David. He's over in the corner, like rocking, saying, "The end is near. The end is near." Like anything to make himself seem crazy. And when he does this, and he changes his behavior to act mentally insane, God works through David's act. And the king of the Philistines says, "Get him out of here. I have enough crazy people that I deal with on a daily basis. I don't need another one." That's the Logan translation. The Bible doesn't actually explicitly say that. But he goes and he escapes. And when he escapes, he writes this in Psalm 34. "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and he delivered me from all of my fears. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces shall never be ashamed. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and delivers them. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. Oh, fear the Lord, you his saints, for those who fear him have no lack. The young lions suffer and want and hunger, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. Come, O children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. What man is there who desires life and loves many days that he may see good? Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from deceit. Turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. The eyes of the Lord are towards the righteous, and his ears toward their cry. The face of the Lord is against those who do evil, to cut off the memory of them from the earth. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all of their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. He keeps all his bones, not one of them is broken. Affliction will slay the wicked, and for those who hate the righteous will be condemned. The Lord redeems the life of his servants. None of those who take refuge in him will be condemned. Now, I know this is a longer psalm, and we're not necessarily going to have time to unpack each line, but I want to give you the basic message of this. What I believe that David is doing is he's writing this down as he leaves so that he can go back to his people and encourage them. To say, I put myself in more danger than what I actually needed to, and because I did that, God was still faithful whenever I cried out to him. And so I will continue to bless the Lord. I will continue to praise his name because even though I got myself into this bad situation, he's still faithful to the righteous. He's still faithful to me because I believe and I follow him. When you think about your own life, some of you were thinking about some funny situations that happened, but if we're all being realistic, there are things that are happening to people in this room today, and maybe even watching online, that you feel like you're stuck. You feel like you're in danger. You feel hurt, you feel the pain, and you're just trying to figure your way out of it. I just want to tell you what David would tell you. Just trust in the Lord and bless his name. That's all you need to do. When you think about David and his life, he was so bold to face Goliath, wasn't he? Like no one else in the entire army, including Saul himself, was going to go against Goliath. All of them were shaking in their armor. And here's this young kid named David. He comes up and he goes, I'll do it. I'll fight Goliath because I know God's with me. I know he'll be there for me. I know he'll fight my battle for me. And they're like, no, they laughed at him, but he continued to press. And then they put armor on him, and the armor was too big for him. He wasn't even a grown man yet. And Goliath is this giant who is likely around 9 feet tall, and he faces Goliath. And with all the faith and radical, insane faith that David had, he faced Goliath toe to toe and ended up destroying the enemy because he trusted in God. Yet, that same David faces Saul, someone who is much smaller than Goliath, someone who is less powerful than Goliath was. And instead of David facing Saul and saying, if my God is for me, then who can be against me? He runs away. And when I was reading that and I was thinking and dwelling about David, I'm like, man, we do that so much in our life. When big things happen and we can't control it and they're too big for us to handle, we immediately think, oh, God has to have this because if he doesn't, then I'm a goner. But when things seem smaller and more manageable, we don't trust in God anymore. Instead, we're like, well, how can I get out of this? Because Saul is someone that I could fight. I don't have the training that he might have in the military, but I might be able to hold my ground if I'm against him. But against Goliath, I don't stand a chance. It makes me think about whenever Caitlin was diagnosed with cancer. A big Goliath, and our whole family was just so faithful. So trusting to maybe even a fault to some people that God was going to take care of Caitlin Hensley. Yet, when we would go home and we'd face something that was much smaller than that, whatever it was in our life, we would face it and we'd be like, well, I don't have trust in God because he's given me a brain to figure out all this. I don't necessarily need to go to God because I can figure this out. I can get myself out of this, and I can prove to God that I'm still worthy to be called. I'm still worthy to be a part of his kingdom. I'm still worthy to be saved. And David's saying it's not going to work because his ways are much higher than our ways. His thoughts are much higher than our thoughts. And because of that, anything that we think of as a solution, he knows something that is going to be so much better for us. But because he's given us free will, he allows us to continue to move. And this is what happens to David. He continues to move and finds himself in deeper waters, in deeper trouble than what he was, to where now there is no solution anymore. His only solution is to trust in God and to cry out to God and say, God, I've gotten myself in a much bigger mess. If I would have just trusted you here when Saul was coming after me, I would have known that you would have protected me. I would have known that you would have been here with me. But instead, I ran away, trying to figure out my own solution. And now that I'm here in this place that's much deeper, much bigger, I can't fight off all of these people. I'm going to need you here again. And God uses his only solution to be mentally insane, to change his behavior. He uses that for the good of David, who loved him and was called according to his purpose. So David writes this, saying, I remember when I sought the Lord, and he heard me, and he answered me. So I don't have to fear anymore because he is here with me. That when I sought the Lord, and he heard me, and he answered me, and he delivered me from this situation, it reminded me that I don't need to rely on myself. In fact, I can't rely on myself because I'm not trustworthy. I'm still sinful, I'm still broken, and my brokenness is going to lead me to more broken solutions. So I need to continue to go to the one who's going to provide the way that's going to lead me into the life of everlasting. This is the type of faith that I want us to have, to where it seems insane. Now we get to verse 8. And it may be one of the more famous lines in the Psalms. It's one that I definitely grew up hearing a lot. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. I remember hearing that all the time. Just taste and see that the Lord is good. And oftentimes, and there's nothing wrong with how it's been preached, because I preach it that way, and I'll continue to preach it the way that I'm about to describe. But taste and see, I always thought of like taking part of communion, in a sense, right? Taste and see that the Lord is good. Take a piece of Christianity and try it out for a little bit, and you'll see that the Lord is good. Take a moment and just have a small taste of what Christ is all about, right? See his forgiveness. Experience his forgiveness. Trusting God with something in your life, and you'll see that he's good. Just take a small taste. Because if we take a small taste of something, God's like a potato chip. You can't just have one. You got to continue to eat and consume the entire bag, right? And that's what taste and see was, until I actually went into the Hebrew. I unintentionally went into the Hebrew. The Hebrew word that's translated in our English as taste, the root word of it also comes from the phrase at the very beginning of Psalm 34, where it says David went or pretended to be insane, or he changed his behavior, depending on your translation. The same root word that's taste goes back to that. And so it's almost like Psalm 34:8 says, oh, change your behavior and see that the Lord is good. Change the way that you do things. Change the things that you trust in. change your behavior, and you'll see that the Lord is good. Because when you trust in God, when you seek God, when you bless God, when you worship God, when you seek after His will and His direction, you'll taste and see, because it will start changing your behavior. So if you're stuck in a financial situation that you feel like you can't get out of, and you're trying to find all of these financial solutions to get yourself out of debt, to get yourself out of whatever you're in, taste and see that the Lord is good. It says change your behavior with your money, with how you spend it. Because when you change it, not to indulge yourself, but to honor God, God will provide for you. Taste and see that the Lord is good. If it's a sinful pattern that you have in your life, right? I know that there's addictions, and I know that there's a process when it comes to getting rid of those addictions. But what God is maybe even telling someone in here, when you're stuck in this sinful pattern and you keep sinning the same way over and over and over again, maybe change your behavior. Taste and see that the Lord is good by changing the way that you approach your sin. Oftentimes what churches teach and what pastors teach is that whenever if you have some type of sin, some type of addiction, just stop doing it. Like, find different ways to prevent yourself from falling into that again. And that's not helpful, but God is maybe saying, taste and see that I'm good. Change your behavior, and instead of trying to stop doing something, instead change it and start pursuing me. Because the closer you get to me, the less of a desire you will have for sin. Because I am not sinful. I'm not going to lead you into a sinful place. So when you start making your way and you're prioritizing Bible study, not to get yourself out of something, not to run away from your sinfulness, but simply to change your behavior and say, Lord, I'm not trying to stop doing this. I'm just trying to pursue you. Then what's going to happen is you're going to see that the Lord is good, and you'll have less of a desire for those sinful things because you're pursuing a God who is good. And it's almost like Psalm 34, and I believe that it is a call for people to repent. To say, listen, you're trying to get out of these things. You're trying to do these things. You're trying to be all legalistic. And really, what God wants you to do is just bless and praise His name. He wants you to seek Him. He wants you to find Him so that He can answer you and show that He is good to you. Because those who seek the Lord, verse 10, lack no good thing. When you seek Him, everything that's good for you will come your way. And everything that's bad for you will not find its way in your heart as you continue to seek Him. And you'll see this later in verse 13 or verse 12. It says, what man is there who desires life and loves many days, that he may see good? David starts this question, how do we taste and see that the Lord is good? Verse 13, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. Pursue God so that you have an honest heart. And the words that you speak will also be honest and honoring towards God. Verse 14, turn away from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. In order to turn away from evil and to do good, David instructs, seek peace, seek God, and pursue Him. Taste and see that the Lord is good. The eyes of the Lord are towards the righteous, and His ears toward their cry. This is just a small reminder as we wrap up this message. Whatever you're dealing with, for one, I felt the burden of it, so I know at least one person's dealing with something. Whatever that is, taste and see that the Lord is good. Because when you seek God, His eyes and His ears are towards you, seeing you in your current situation, listening for your cry, so that when you seek the Lord, He'll hear you, and he'll answer you, and he'll deliver you. And that's why you can trust in him.